Kara looked at the dying world around her. The planet she called home was no longer the place it used to be. The once beautiful skies were now gray, and the land that had once been filled with vibrant colors was now barren. Her people, the Ilish, were struggling. They had always lived in harmony with the land, but the resources were gone. Their way of life was fading away with every passing day. Kara was a mother. As she looked at her two children, she felt the weight of the world. On her shoulders, her son Tar was just beginning to show signs of leadership. He was brave, strong, and always willing to protect his family. Sia, her daughter, was younger but clever. She had a sharp mind and often came up with solutions to problems when no one else could. But despite their talents, both of them were facing a future with no hope. Kara had tried everything to save her people. She had gone to the elders, the wise leaders of her people, seeking guidance, but they had no answers. They were as desperate as she was. The planet's resources had been used up, and there was no way to grow more. The Elysians had always been isolated from the rest of the galaxy, choosing to live in peace, untouched by the wars and politics of other races. But now that peace was costing them everything. One day, while walking through the dry fields, Kara heard something, a distant hum. It was faint at first, but as she listened, it grew louder. She looked to the sky, her heart racing. It was a ship, a human ship. Humans were known for their resilience and resourcefulness. They had survived wars and terrible hardships, always finding a way to thrive. Kara knew that if anyone could help her people, it would be the humans. But she had never met one before. The Elysians had always kept to themselves, avoiding contact with the outside world. To ask for help would be a huge step, and Kara didn't know if she was ready for it. But what choice did she have? The ship landed in a clearing not far from her home. Kara's heart skipped a beat as she rushed back to the village to tell the others. The village was small, just a few families living together in harmony, but the news of the human arrival spread quickly. The elders gathered, and Kara explained what she had heard. After a long discussion, it was decided that Kara would be the one to approach the human. She was the best chance for their survival. When she arrived at the ship, the human was standing outside. He was tall, with dark hair, and eyes that seemed to look straight through her. He wore strange clothing, but there was a calmness to him that made her feel a little more at ease. "Are you the one who heard my ship?" the human asked. His voice was deep but kind. Kara nodded. "My people are in need of help. Our planet is dying, and we have no way to save it. We've heard that humans are strong, that you have the ability to survive where others cannot. I beg you to help us." The human looked at her for a moment, then stepped forward. "Michael," he said, "I'm here to help, but we'll need to work together if we're going to save your people. What is it that you need?" Kara took a deep breath. "We need resources, knowledge, and protection. Our world is too far gone to heal on its own. But with your help, maybe we can start over." Michael didn't hesitate. "I'll do what I can. But I need to know more about your people. What can you tell me about your culture, your way of life?" Kara paused, unsure of how to explain everything. Her people had always been private, and they had never shared much with outsiders. But in this moment, with the future of her children, and her species at risk, she had to let go of her fear. "We are a peaceful people," she said. "We value family above all else. Our children are our future, and we raise them to be strong and wise. But without the resources to feed them and protect them, we are losing our future. My children. They are all that is left." Michael nodded, his expression serious. "Then we will make sure they have a future." Now Kara felt a sense of relief wash over her. For the first time in a long while, she felt like there was hope. Michael's words gave her strength. Heard of humans being capable of great things? But now, she was starting to believe it. Over the next few days, Kara and Michael worked together to find a solution. She showed him the damage to the planet, and he offered ideas for how to restore what had been lost. There were no easy answers, but they both knew that the work ahead would be difficult. Michael's skills were different from the Elysians, but together, they could create something new. However, something unexpected began to happen. Kara's children, Tar and Sile, began to take a strong interest in Michael. Tar, the brave one, admired Michael's strength, and Sile, the clever one, was fascinated by the technology he brought with him. The children followed Michael everywhere, asking him questions, watching him work, trying to learn everything they could from him. Kara noticed the change in them. It was a shift that she hadn't anticipated, but it was undeniable. Were bonding with Michael in a way she had never seen before. And with that bond came a strange new feeling in her heart. She knew that her children needed a father figure, someone to guide them through the difficult times ahead. But she hadn't expected it to be a human. As she watched them interact, Kara couldn't help but wonder, was this the right path? A human truly become the father her children needed? Little did Kara know, this was just the beginning of an unexpected journey. The bond between her children and Michael would grow in ways she could never have imagined, changing the course of her people's future forever. The days following Michael's arrival were filled with activity. Kara and Michael worked together, combining their knowledge in an effort to save the planet. They designed new ways to harvest the remaining resources, worked on ways to purify the water, and even attempted to grow plants in the barren soil. While the work was difficult, Michael's persistence and calmness gave the Elysians a sense of hope they hadn't had in years. But it wasn't just the adults who were drawn to Michael's ideas. Kara's children, Tar and Sile, had become his constant companions. They watched him work with wide eyes, asking questions about his technology and how it worked. Michael patiently explained everything, teaching them what he knew and encouraging their curiosity. Tar, especially, found himself drawn to Michael's strength. The young boy had always been taught that bravery and strength were the most important qualities, but now he saw another kind of strength in Michael. It wasn't just physical, it was the strength of someone who never gave up, even when the odds seemed impossible. "Tell me, Michael," Tar asked one evening, as the two of them worked to repair a damaged water purification system. "How do you keep going when things are so hard?" Michael looked up from his work and smiled. "Sometimes you just have to take things one step at a time. You can't always change everything at once. But if you keep trying, eventually you'll make a difference." Tar nodded, his young mind processing the words. He had always thought that he needed to fight harder and be stronger to prove his worth. But now he was beginning to understand that strength could also come from patience and determination. Saya, on the other hand, was fascinated by the technology Michael had brought. With him, she was quick to learn, and every time Michael showed her something new, her excitement was hard to hide. The more she learned, the more she began to see how human technology could help her people. One day, while Michael was working on a small energy generator, Sael approached him with a question. "How do you make it work?" she asked, her voice full of curiosity. "It's all about understanding the energy," Michael explained. "This generator works by converting heat into power. If we can make the most of the resources you have, we can keep your people alive." Sial's eyes lit up with understanding. "So it's like taking something that's already there and using it better." "That's right," Michael said with a smile. "Everything in your world has value. You just have to find a way to use it." Sial's fascination with the technology grew, and she spent hours each day learning from Michael. Her once quiet nature had transformed into one of eagerness and excitement. Michael had become more than just a human to her. He was a teacher, a guide, and a symbol of hope for her future. Kara, however, watched these growing bonds with mixed feelings. Part of her was grateful that her children had found someone to look up to, someone who could teach them things she couldn't, but another part of her, the part that still clung to her culture and the way things had always been, felt uneasy. Her people had always kept their bloodlines pure, and the idea of a human playing such an important role in her children's lives was difficult to accept. She had always believed that her children would grow up to lead their people, just as her ancestors had. But now, she wasn't sure what the future would look like. Michael was becoming more than just an outsider. He was becoming a part of their lives in a way that felt natural, yet foreign. One evening, as Kara sat by the fire with her children, she watched them laughing with Michael. Tar had just told a joke, and Saya was giggling uncontrollably. Michael was smiling too, his face lighting up with joy. It was a moment of peace, a rare feeling in these troubled times, and Kara couldn't help but feel a pang of doubt. "Do you think it's right?" she asked quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. Do you think they should be so close to him? The question caught Tar and Sile off guard. They stopped laughing and turned to their mother, confused. Kara's face softened as she looked at them. I know he's helping us, and I know you both look up to him. But I worry about what this means for our people. Our way of life has always been. It's different from the rest of the galaxy. And now, I'm not sure what will happen if we change that. Tar and Sile exchanged looks. Then Tar spoke up. But Mother, he's helping us. He's not like the others. He's kind and strong in a way we've never seen before. He's teaching us how to survive. Saya nodded in agreement. He's not like any outsider we've ever known. I don't think it's wrong. I think he's just part of our family now. Kara felt a weight in her chest. Her children had always been her world, and now they were growing up in ways she hadn't expected. She had always been their protector, their guide, but now they were seeing the world through new eyes that saw Michael not just as a helper, but as someone they trusted and admired. As the days passed, Kara found herself watching Michael more closely. She saw how he interacted with her children, how he listened to them, how he treated them with the same respect he showed her. She saw the bond forming between them, and a part of her began to understand why they were drawn to him. He was a source of hope, not just for her people, but for her family. Yet, in the back of her mind, Kara couldn't shake the thought that this bond was more than just a simple connection. Something deeper was happening, and she didn't know if it was for the best. But for the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to hope. Maybe, just maybe, Michael's arrival was the beginning of something good for her people. Days passed into weeks, and the work between Michael and the Elysians grew stronger. Together, they began to see signs of improvement. The fields, once dry and barren, showed faint signs of life. New plants began to sprout from the soil. The water purification system Michael had helped design was now functioning, and the air no longer felt as heavy with dust. Kara saw hope in the changes, but as the days passed, she couldn't ignore the feeling that something was shifting. Her children, Tar and Sile, were changing in ways that made her both proud and uneasy. They had always been eager learners, but now they were spending more and more time with Michael. Tar had become an eager student of human strength and resilience. He wanted to know everything about Michael's training, how he kept his body strong even in the toughest of situations. Sile, on the other hand, had become fascinated by the technology Michael had brought with him. She asked endless questions about machines and how they worked, and Michael was more than happy to explain. Kara had always been proud of her children's curiosity. But now, as she watched them learn from Michael, she began to wonder, was this bond forming between them? Something natural, or was it something that might be harmful in the long run? One evening, as Kara sat in her small hut, watching her children and Michael work outside, she couldn't help but feel a growing unease. They were laughing and talking together as if they had known each other for years. It was clear that Michael was becoming a part of their lives in a way that was hard to ignore. Kara had always raised her children with the knowledge that their people, the Elysians, had a unique culture. They were a proud people, and their traditions and values had kept them safe for centuries. But now she wasn't sure what was happening to them. Her children were bonding with Michael in ways that seemed to go beyond just friendship. They trusted him, respected him, and saw him as a role model. Kara had to admit that Michael was a good man. He was kind, patient, and intelligent. But was it enough to ignore the deep cultural rift this connection might create? The more she thought about it, the more conflicted Kara felt. On one hand, Michael had given them hope. His presence had sparked something in her people that had been missing for a long time. The Elysians were no longer just surviving. They were starting to rebuild. But on the other hand, this growing bond between Michael and her children made her question everything she had known about their culture. That night, as the fire crackled in the background, Kara sat down with Michael. She had been thinking about this conversation for a long time, and now she knew it was time to ask the questions that had been haunting her. "Michael," she began, her voice steady but full of uncertainty, "I need to ask you something." He looked at her, his expression soft and open. "Of course, Kara. What's on your mind?" She hesitated for a moment before continuing. I see how my children look up to you. I see the bond that's forming between you and them, and I'm grateful for it. But I can't help but wonder, is it right? My people have always kept to themselves. Our traditions, our way of life, are built on the idea of protecting our bloodlines, of keeping our culture intact. But now I feel like I'm losing control. Over that, my children are changing in ways that I don't fully understand. They're learning from you in ways I didn't expect. I wonder, is this the right thing for them? Michael's eyes softened as he listened to her concerns. He could see the weight in her voice, the fear that came from her not knowing what the future held. He understood that this wasn't just about him, this was about her people, her children, and the future of their world. Kara, he said gently, I understand your worries. I know that I'm not from your world, and I know that I don't share your culture. But I also know that what we have here, what's happening with your children, is something special. It's not about replacing your ways or changing who you are. It's about helping each other, about learning from one another. I don't expect to be their father, but I can help guide them, share what I know. I've seen something in them, something worth protecting, and I believe they have the strength to make a difference. Kara nodded, her thoughts racing. She knew that Michael wasn't trying to replace her role as a mother, but she also couldn't ignore the reality of what was happening. She had always been the one to protect and teach her children, but now they were looking to someone else, someone from a different world. It was a shift that was hard to accept, but perhaps it was one that had to happen. I don't know what to do, Kara admitted, her voice full of doubt. I've spent my whole life making sure my children understood the importance of our culture. I taught them that we are unique, that we have a duty to preserve our traditions. And now, I see them learning things that I didn't teach them. They're becoming more like you, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Michael reached out and placed a hand on her shoulder, offering her the kind of comfort that was hard to find in these uncertain times. Kara, I can't change who you are or what you've taught your children, but I believe that learning from each other doesn't have to mean abandoning your past. It can mean growing stronger together. Kara looked into his eyes, seeing the sincerity in his words. Slowly, a sense of peace began to settle in her heart. She didn't have all the answers, but she knew that this wasn't just about her children or Michael. It was about their future and how they would move forward together. That night, Kara sat outside, watching the stars above her. The future was uncertain, and there were many things she didn't know. But one thing was clear. No matter what happened, her children had a future now, a future that was no longer just about survival, but about hope, connection, and the strength of what they could create together. The days seemed to blur together as Michael and the Elysians worked tirelessly to restore their planet. There were moments of success, new crops growing in the fields, clean water flowing from the purification system, and the community starting to feel alive again. But in the quiet moments, Kara couldn't shake the feeling of unease. Her children had changed, and so had her place in their lives. Tar, once so determined to lead his people with strength, had grown closer to Michael. The boy now spent most of his time training with him, learning how to survive in ways Kara had never taught him. Michael had become a mentor, teaching him not only how to fight, but also how to think, how to strategize, and how to approach challenges with patience. Kara had always wanted Tar to be strong, but now, as she watched him change, she wasn't sure if this was the strength she had envisioned for him. Sia, too, had become more distant, but in a different way. The girl who had once been so quiet, so content with her books and the old ways, was now constantly asking Michael about his technology. Studying it with the same passion she had once applied to her studies of Elysian history, Michael had shown her the wonders of human invention machines, gadgets, and tools that her people had never imagined. Sial's eyes shone with excitement, and Kara saw the spark of a new kind of curiosity in her daughter. It was a curiosity that Kara had never encouraged, one that pulled her daughter away from the Elysian traditions that Kara had worked so hard to teach her. But it wasn't just the children who had changed. Kara had begun to see herself differently, too. She had spent so much of her life protecting her people, making sure that their ways were never forgotten. Now, with Michael's help, her people were starting to recover, yet in the process, their culture was beginning to shift. It was impossible to deny that the influence of Michael, the human who had come to help them, was beginning to change the fabric of their society. One evening, as the sun set behind the mountains, Kara found herself sitting alone, her thoughts heavy in her mind. She had watched Michael's influence on her children, and although she saw the good he was bringing, she couldn't ignore the deep sense of loss she felt. Her children were not the same. They were becoming more like him. They were starting to speak of the future in terms of technology, not tradition. They were talking about the world outside their home, about the things humans could offer them. Kara couldn't help but wonder, was this the right choice? Had she made a mistake by allowing Michael into their lives? Was she giving up too much? Of what made them Elysian? She had always believed that the strength of her people lay in their traditions, in their way of life. But now, as she watched her children grow and change, she felt a deep fear that maybe the world she had known was slipping away. The sound of footsteps broke her thoughts, and she turned to see Michael walking toward her. He had always known when. She was troubled, and tonight it seemed was no different. "Are you all right?" he asked softly, sitting beside her. His voice was gentle, as if he could sense the weight of her worries. Kara didn't answer right away. She looked out at the sunset, the warm orange and purple hues stretching across the sky. Finally, she spoke. "I don't know what to do anymore, Michael. I've watched my children change so much. They're not the same as they were before. And I wonder... maybe I've made a mistake. Maybe letting you stay here, letting you become part of their lives, was wrong." Michael's expression softened as he listened to her words. He had never intended to come between Kara and her children. He had come to help, and he had only ever wanted to teach them what he knew. He knew how important their traditions were to them, but he also understood that sometimes in order to survive, change was necessary. "Kara," Michael said after a long pause, "I understand your fear, but I want you to know that I'm not here to replace your traditions or your ways of life. I'm not here to change who you are. I'm just trying to help. The strength your people have, the love you have for your children, it's something special, and that won't change, no matter what happens." Kara looked at him, her eyes filled with doubt. "But my children are changing. They're learning things I never taught them. They're growing up in ways that feel foreign to me. I don't know who they are becoming, and I fear I've lost them." Michael reached out and gently took her hand. "Kara, they are still your children. They may be learning new things, but that doesn't mean they've forgotten who they are. Your values, your love, that's still with them. It's just that. Now, they have new tools to work with. And that's a good thing. Your people are strong, Kara, and your children will be strong because of what they're learning." Kara took a deep breath, trying to let his words sink in. It wasn't easy. She had always believed that her children would lead their people in the old ways. But now, as she watched them grow, she realized that maybe they were meant to lead. In a new way, one that combined the strength of their past with the possibilities of the future. It wasn't an easy thing to accept. But Kara could see that it was the only way forward. "I'm not sure I can let go of the past," Kara admitted, her voice soft. "You don't have to let go of the past," Michael replied. "You just have to be willing to move forward with it. Your traditions, your culture, they're part of who you are. But that doesn't mean you can't grow. The future doesn't erase the past. It builds on it." Kara stared at the sunset, her thoughts swirling. She realized that this was a moment of choice. She could cling to the past, try to hold on to the old ways, and risk losing everything. Or she could take a step into the unknown, trusting that the future could hold something just as beautiful, just as meaningful, as the past she had worked so hard to protect. Finally, after a long silence, Kara nodded. "I think I understand. It's not about losing who we are. It's about growing together." Michael smiled, relief flooding his face. He had never wanted to push her. He had only wanted to help her see that change didn't mean destruction. It meant evolution. It's a chance for her people to rise again. As the stars began to appear in the sky above them, Kara felt a new sense of peace settle in her heart. She wasn't sure what the future held, but she knew that, together, they could face it. The choice had been made, and now it was time to move forward. The work on the planet continued, and every day brought new challenges and successes. The crops were beginning to grow stronger, the water was clean, and the Elysians were starting to rebuild their homes and communities. The future that had once seemed uncertain was now filled with hope. But Kara knew that this peace, this progress, could not last forever. There were always outside forces that could disrupt everything they had worked for. It was just a few weeks after Kara's conversation with Michael that their peaceful existence was shaken. A new visitor arrived, an emissary from the Galactic Council. He landed his ship outside the village, and when he stepped off, it was clear that he was no ordinary traveler. His uniform marked him as someone important, someone with authority. Kara watched from a distance as the emissary, a tall alien with pale blue skin and sharp features, spoke to Michael. His voice was firm, but Michael seemed calm, even as the emissary gestured toward the village. Kara felt a knot tighten in her stomach. The Galactic Council was powerful, and their presence on this planet could change everything. Kara approached them slowly, her footsteps steady, but filled with hesitation. As she drew closer, the emissary turned to her. "You are Kara, the leader of this world?" he asked, his voice cold and authoritative. "I am," Kara said, standing tall, despite the unease that swirled within her. "I am Xeric," the emissary continued. "I've come to inform you that your planet's actions are being monitored. Are not alone in the galaxy, Kara. The Galactic Council has noticed your people's sudden recovery. We are concerned." Kara's heart sank. She had heard rumors of the Council's interest in remote planets like hers, but she had hoped they would stay away. Concerned? Why? Xeric's expression hardened. "Your planet was considered isolated, and its resources were not deemed worth any external intervention. But now, with your apparent recovery, there are questions. Questions about how this is possible, and why you are suddenly working with humans." Kara exchanged a quick glance with Michael, who had been silent throughout the conversation. Took a step forward, his eyes locked on the emissary. "We've been working together to help her people," Michael said. "Your council doesn't need to interfere with their future. They've had enough of that already." Xeric's eyes narrowed, but he remained calm. "You may have helped them, human. But there are laws, and you are breaking them. The Council does not approve of human interference in the development of other species, especially one as isolated as the Elysians." Kara felt her heart race. She had known the Council would eventually find out, but she hadn't expected their reaction. To be so hostile. "What does this mean for us?" she asked, her voice steady despite her growing fear. "It means," Xeric said, "that we are ordering you to halt any further cooperation with the humans. This planet is now under observation, and if we find that your species is deviating from its expected course, there will be consequences." Michael's face grew tense, and Kara could see the muscles in his jaw clench. But he said nothing. He had always known that his presence on the planet was a risk, but he had hoped it would be for the better. The emissary turned to leave. But before he did, Kara spoke again. "What do you expect us to do? Go back to the way we were? My people? We're dying? We're losing everything?" she said, her voice rising slightly. Xeric paused and glanced back at her. "The Galactic Council has its reasons. It is not for you to question. If you want to survive, you will follow the rules." Kara's eyes flashed with a mixture of anger and frustration. "We've already lost everything," she said quietly. "I will not let my people be forced back into despair. We found a new hope. If the Council wants to stop that, they will have to face us." The emissary looked at her for a long moment, and for a brief second, Kara thought she saw something like pity in his eyes. Then, without another word, he turned and left. The air around Kara seemed to grow colder as Xeric's ship lifted off, leaving only silence in its wake. She stood still for a long time, the weight of the Council's words pressing down on her. Shoulders Michael moved beside her, his voice calm but firm. "They won't stop us, Kara. We've done nothing wrong. We've only tried to help." She looked up at him, her eyes full of uncertainty. but they have the power to do what they want. If they decide to intervene, if they decide to force us to stop, I don't know what we can do. Michael placed a hand on her shoulder. Fight. We don't go back to what we were. Elysians deserve more than that. Your people deserve a future, and I won't let the council take that away. Kara nodded, taking comfort in his words. She had spent her whole life protecting her people, but she had never imagined that the greatest threat to their survival would come from the very forces that claimed to protect the galaxy. That night, as the stars twinkled above them, Kara made a decision. She would not let the Galactic Council dictate her people's future. They had fought for so long just to survive, and now that they had hope, she would do whatever it took to keep it. She turned to Michael, her expression serious. We won't back down. We'll make sure they know that we are not afraid. Michael nodded. Together, we'll show them what we're capable of. Kara felt a fire stir within her. She didn't know how they would face the council or what the future would hold, but she knew one thing for sure: they would fight for their right to survive. Together, they would stand strong against whatever came next. The days following the visit from the Galactic Council's emissary were tense. Kara could feel the weight of the decision on her shoulders. The council had warned them, but she refused to let fear control their future. Her people had come so far, and she wasn't about to let anyone take that away from them. But the challenge ahead would be far from easy. Kara called a meeting with the village leaders and Michael. The room was filled with silence as everyone waited for her to speak. Her heart pounded in her chest, but she knew she had to be strong. The future of her people depended on what happened next. We can't allow the council to stop us, Kara began, her voice steady despite the worry in her mind. We've worked too hard to turn back now. We need to find a way to stand up to them, to show them that we will not be controlled. Michael stood beside her, his expression serious. Kara's right. We've come together to rebuild this planet. We've learned from each other, and we've built something stronger than before. We can't let the council take that away. The village leaders looked around at each other, unsure of what to do. They had never faced such a threat, and the idea of going up against the Galactic Council seemed impossible. But Kara's words had sparked something in them. They had seen the change in their people, and they didn't want to lose it. What do you suggest we do? One of the elders, a tall Elysian woman named Tessa, asked. Her voice was filled with uncertainty, but also a hint of hope. Kara took a deep breath, her mind racing with ideas. We will reach out to the other species. We've always kept to ourselves, but maybe it's time we stopped hiding. We need allies. We can't fight the council alone. Michael nodded. If we can unite with others who feel the same way, maybe we can stand against the council. We've seen how they operate. They'll back down if they know we're not alone. The elders exchanged looks. They'd always been wary of outsiders, but the thought of working with other species was becoming more and more appealing. The Elysians had been isolated for so long, and they had forgotten what it felt like to have support from others. After a long pause, Tessa spoke again. I agree. It's time for us to step out of the shadows. We can't fight the council alone, but we can't stay silent either. We'll work together with you, Kara. We'll find the allies you need. The room filled with murmurs of agreement, and for the first time in weeks, Kara felt a sense of unity. They had made the decision to fight back, to protect their future, and to embrace the unknown. That evening, Michael and Kara sat together under the stars. The village was quiet, and the soft hum of the night filled the air. They had a lot of work ahead of them, but for the first time in a long while, Kara felt a spark of hope. We're not alone, Kara said softly, her eyes looking up at the stars. There are others out there who understand what we're trying to do. We just need to find them. Michael smiled, his gaze also on the stars, and we will. We'll find a way to make the council see that we don't need their permission to survive. We'll make our own future. Kara nodded, feeling a sense of calm wash over her. She had made the right decision. It was time to stop running, to stop hiding, and to stand up for what her people deserved. No one could take their hope away from them now. In the days that followed, they sent out messages to other planets, reaching out to anyone who might be willing to listen. They needed allies, but they also needed to prove that their cause was just. Kara wasn't sure how it would go, but she knew that they had no other choice but to try. The response was slow at first. Some species were hesitant, unsure about getting involved with the Elysians in their struggle, but as word spread, more and more came forward, offering their support. The resistance was small at first, but it grew stronger every day. The Elysians weren't alone anymore. They had allies now, and together, they were ready to face the Galactic Council. Then, a month after the emissary's visit, the Council made its next move. A fleet of ships arrived in the atmosphere above their planet. The sky was filled with the hum of powerful engines, and the people of the village gathered in silence, waiting to see what would happen. Michael stood beside Kara, his hand resting on her shoulder. "It's time," he said quietly. Kara's heart raced, but she stood tall. She had made her choice, and now it was time to stand by it. They had prepared for this moment, and she wasn't going to back down. The council ships landed, and from them emerged several high-ranking officials. They were tall, imposing figures, and they didn't look pleased. The head of the delegation, a stern-looking alien named Rylos, approached Kara. "We have given you the chance to follow the rules," Rylos said, his voice cold. "But it seems you are determined to defy us. Do you really think you can stand against the power of the Galactic Council?" Kara stepped forward, her voice strong and clear. "We will not go back to the way we were. We've fought for our future, and we've built something better. We are no longer the isolated species you once knew, and we will not be controlled." Rylos looked at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, without a word, he turned and gestured to his fleet. They would have to decide whether to fight or to leave. Kara waited, her heart pounding in her chest. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing. She had fought for it, and she wouldn't let anyone take it away. Finally, Rylos spoke again. "Very well," he said, his voice filled with resignation. "You have made your choice. It will allow you to keep your world, for now." The tension in the air slowly lifted as the Council's fleet began to depart. Kara stood there, stunned, as the ships vanished into the sky. They had won. The Elysians had fought for their right to survive, and they had succeeded. As Michael stepped beside her, Kara smiled, a tear slipping down her cheek. "We did it," she whispered. Together, they had won the first battle for their future. And with their new allies by their side, they were ready for whatever came next.